So, hello and welcome to podcast number 5, the TORQ podcast. I've actually got we got a new person here who's going to feature in our podcasts moving forward. I'm sure plenty. Not that he's not been with the company for a long time, but Richard, who is our sales director at TORQ. He's going to accompany me on this because we're going to be talking about the new TORQ Fuelling System. The TORQ Fuelling System's been in existence for about a decade. We've launched our one-to-one proto products recently, and we've incorporated them into a new TORQ Fuelling System, which allows you to consume anything between 30 and 120 grams plus per hour of carbohydrate. So we're really looking forward to talking about this. And having Richard here is great because Richard talks about these things all the time. He's obviously talks from a sales and marketing perspective, but we've spent a lot of time together, haven't we, Richard, over the years? So me as a sports scientist, he's always keen to learn. We always sort of bounce ideas off each other, but we feel that this will be a really good opportunity for the two of us to really, hopefully, get across the principles of the new TORQ Fuelling System to you guys with absolute clarity, so that you're not confused moving forward. But I don't know, Richard, if you want to give just a little bit of a background to yourself. I've done it in the past, and you'll only have to do it once.
No worries. So yeah, I've worked with Matt now for 13 years. I was a distributor of a brand in the UK for our largest current distributor. And then from 2020, I've started to work directly with the brand. My role is to cover all of our sales, both in the UK and internationally, and then also create the direction for our marketing as well. I come from a languages and then teacher training background as well, and it works very well with the TORQ brand because we always take a very consultative approach to how we speak to our customers. We don't just pop a product in front of them and tell them it's going to work. We want to understand that customer and their needs first to then be able to make our product suitable for them and find out more about them. It's always been the best approach for us.
That education first.
Yeah, differentiates us from other brands.
Well, we're going to test those language skills to the hilt today, because what me and Richard need to remember is we've got loads of TORQ products sitting in front of us here to help try and get this across. So if you are watching on YouTube, it will be a piece of cake to follow, we'd hope. But obviously, for those listening, we need to make sure that we explain things properly. Absolutely. So language skills to the top of the agenda. So just a bit of a brief outline to those that don't know what the TORQ Fuelling System is. It's been around for a decade, really, and it's all about everything being in 30-gram carbohydrate units. So we have, I'm going to hold one up to the camera. I'm going to hold a gel in my hand here. So one of the TORQ gels has 30 grams of carbohydrate in it. We have a TORQ bar, which was actually the first product we ever produced, and that has 30 grams of carbohydrate in it. We have a pack of TORQ jellies, which is one of our more recent additions, and hugely popular they are. Each pack has 30 grams of carbohydrate in it. And we have an energy drink. So we have a sachet here. We also sell it obviously in pouches, which you add to 500 millilitres of water, and that has 30 grams of carbohydrate in it. So it's all about 30 grams of carbohydrate.
Can you explain, please, why specifically 30 grams of carbs?
It comes down to the research. So the research from kind of into what we call multiple transportable carbohydrates, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast. The research from about 2004 showed that if you combine glucose with fructose, at a 2-to-1 ratio, you get about a 50% increase in carbohydrate delivery to the blood, and that's because there are two transporters that are used. There's S-GLUT1, which is or SGLT1, sorry, for glucose, and there's GLUT5 for fructose, and these two separate transporters allow these two carbohydrates to cross the intestinal wall into the blood unimpeded, so they don't interact with each other. They have separate pathways, and what that means is that traditionally glucose tends to max out at around about 60 grams.
Like 1 gram a minute.
Yeah, so a gram a minute or 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour. When you add fructose to the equation, you get a separate pathway into the blood, and the 2-to-1, what it was found way back then, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail as we have done in previous podcasts as well. It was found that 60 grams was no longer your limit. You could actually consume and use up to 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour if you consumed a product that was 2 parts glucose, 1 part fructose.
So in essence, then, by working at 90 grams an hour as opposed to 60 grams an hour, and we have all of our products, it makes sense to have them all at 30 grams because each one is divisible by 90. So it just allows you to then mix and match whatever you want for your fueling up to 90 grams an hour, up to 3 products. And then after that, it's based on temperature, environmental conditions as to how much of that needs to be food and how much it needs to be drink, including the fuel.
Yeah, so I mean, what would be quite useful, if I've explained the sort of the different types of unit we've got, of which we've got 4.
Yep.
So one is a drink, and then we've got what we call 3 solid fueling units. Maybe Richard, if you're, would you be able to, with your silky sales skills, explain, if you're the different scenarios for people? So people listening to this podcast are going to wonder how much carbohydrate they should be taking on per hour. We've sort of explained that 90 is the limit, and that's what the research has said, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be consuming 90.
No, not at all. So people should be aware from our podcast of, as a brand who specializes in endurance sport, carbohydrate and keeping on top of your carbohydrate stores in your body so you don't effectively run out is what we're all about. Now, it does depend about how hard you're working as to how much carbohydrate you're actually going to need. If you're just on a leisurely bike ride, a leisurely run, then 1 single torque unit per hour, just 1 30-gram unit, is enough based on the amount that you're actually burning in the first place. And that could just be a gel at the half-hour point, or it could be sipping away on a bottle of energy drink for an hour. If you're going more intermediate level, where you're working a little bit harder, more than a moderate intensity, this is probably the sweet spot for a lot of customers who use our brand. And we also see an awful lot of people who simply underfuel most of their exercise. 2 torque units per hour, which was effectively 60 grams, 2 times 30, is the best way to go. And again, you've got such variety there. One that's really popular with a lot of runners we deal with now is to combine some torque jellies,
which Richard is holding up right now,
with a torque gel, which I'm also holding up. So you could start off, and after 15 minutes, you could have half a packet of jellies, 3 jellies. At the half-hour point, you could have a torque gel, and then you could finish the jellies off before the hour's finished, and that's 60 grams of carbs.
So basically what you're saying is if you graze on a packet of jellies over the hour, and then you have a gel every hour, effectively, then you've had your 60 grams.
Yes, and that's an easy way to do it. And also, if you use our product properly, you will naturally use it. Your training miles are going to be way more than your event or race miles ever will be. So it gives you that chance to also give your brain a bit of a break from only ever taking a gel or only ever chewing a jelly. One of the key benefits with our brand is that we offer these different forms.
And I'm holding up an energy bar now as well, so there's another form, The
gel, which is lovely and soft, the jellies, which are nice and chewy, and of course that energy drink as well, which gives you the added benefits of all your electrolytes that you'll be getting rid of when you're sweating.
Could I just add in at that point, so the 60 grams, which I think Richard has obviously spoken about, I think it's absolutely key, because what we're going to be talking today about the revised TORQ fueling system is you can go from 30 grams up to 120 grams plus, right? But 60 grams is quite an important number, because when we do go to shows and events and we talk to people, it is amazing how many people just aren't fueling at all, or they're fueling hugely inadequately. And you could even get them onto 30 grams of carbohydrate an hour, and that is more than they are currently doing. So like our first step would be to say, look, just try 30, just get yourself used to having 30. We know there's going to be no issues because the product is good enough to be absorbed up to 90 grams. So 30 grams is very easy on the stomach. It's just them having the discipline to do it. But I was out on my bike last night. I had a 3-hour ride last night. It was a wonderful evening with some fit guys, people that I ride with. But, me personally, I was on 60 grams of carbs an hour because that, as Richard said, it was an intermediate intensity. I wasn't racing. I didn't feel that I needed to do more than that. So 60 grams was what we call the fuel for the work required. That's all I needed to do. Now, I think what's going to be interesting as we develop this conversation is how does it ever get to 120 grams?
Yeah,
but we'll talk about that as we get to it. But I was sorry to interrupt, but
sure.
I just felt
beyond 60 grams an hour, you then added an extra torque unit up to 90 grams an hour. And traditionally, this has been the peak of where science has said people could work to. Now, again, when you're working at 90 grams an hour, you're likely to also be quite hot and quite sweaty doing that, unless it's an unusual situation where it's really, really cold. So you would probably be combining at least, and I'll just hold this up, the TORQ energy drink together with gels, for example, so that you could have that on your bike and just be sipping away, or in your soft flask. And then you've got your gels to be consumed every 20 and 40 minutes. So again, it's all about keeping yourself topped up. Now, as Matt mentioned, we do the National Running Show, the National Outdoor Show, and we're really surprised by how many people underfuel. And if you ask them what their fueling strategy is, they look at you like, what's the fueling strategy? But we simply explain that if you don't look after you, it doesn't matter how good your bike is or how comfortable or clever your running shoes are. If you don't look after you, you're going to run out of fuel. And when you run out of fuel, it doesn't matter how expensive that bike is, because that's not going to feel like a nice bike anymore.
I have, I've always made, because I've done obviously a lot of coaching in the past, I've always maintained that you could have two people in front of you. One is fitter, stronger, they've trained harder, they produce more power, and you put them in an endurance situation and you give one of them plain water and you give the other one 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, the less fit person will win. And it's a bit like having a Ferrari next to an inferior, I'm not even going to mention, Ferrari will be quite happy that we're saying they're a fast car. But let's say there's something a little bit less good. The car that has the less good car that has plenty of fuel in the fuel tank will go way further than a Ferrari that doesn't have enough fuel. So, and that's the thing, is everyone's got this energy potential, and you've got to put the fuel in the tank in order to realise it.
The whole purpose, when I speak to product training sessions, I was doing one literally last night with a group of runners at a local store. It is all about keeping yourself topped up so that you never have to, you never get to that stage of running out of fuel. And in this day and age, when the runners last night, all of them had smartwatches on. Most bike computers have got alerts on. And all you can do to save yourself even having to remember to fuel, let your tech do it for you. Just set it so that every 20 minutes it gives you a little vibration or a little beep, just as a reminder. It's like a little friendly tap on the shoulder to say, time to have a drink,
time to have something.
To fuel.
Yeah.
And it's become so easy for people to take that on board, because then they can just concentrate on their running, on their cycling, on their swimming, and then somebody else can remind them to just keep on top of it. And that way, all we're trying to do as a company is help people build new habits.
So what we'll do, we've kind of got up to this 90 gram point now. Let's talk about hydration and how that fits into the fueling system, because the fueling system is kind of it doesn't fully explain what's going on, because it's actually the fueling and hydration system. And the way that this works beautifully is that let's assume that we've got somebody who is on 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour. So we've recommended, they're struggling to get 30 normally. So we just say, look, try and get 60 grams of carbohydrate in. We know they're going to be fine on TORQ, because that's 30 grams below the absorption threshold. It'll be fine on their stomach. And that will give them confidence then to move on to 90 in the future. But if it's really, really hot weather, and this is what I always say to people, if the weather's really hot and you're losing a hell of a lot of fluid, Let's take cycling, for example. 2 of these sachets here in these 2 bottles is 60 grams of carbs. You know, that's what you should be consuming in terms of carbohydrate. But what you're also getting in our energy drink are all the 5 electrolytes. So you're getting a decent amount of salt in there. And also, of course, if you're going to consume 2 of these bottles an hour, a litre of fluid, you're getting a litre of fluid, you're getting all your 5 electrolytes, and you get 60 grams of carbohydrate. If you've got gels in your pocket, you don't need them. They stay in your pocket because you've done your 60 grams of carbs. And I've done events where the sweat rates have been so high that I've been handed up a bottle, and I know that if I'm consuming enough fluid, I mean, I would be on 90 to be fair, but let's just say I was on 60. I know for a fact in hot weather I wouldn't need to touch my gels. And I think this is a big mistake that people make, is when they've got their strategy of trying to aim for, say, 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour, somehow in their head they think, oh, I need to have a gel as well. And that's not the case at all. You know, you if you're drinking sufficient energy drink and you're drinking a litre of our energy drink per hour, everything's done. And that's the beauty, we always say, with the energy drink, isn't it? It's just that one size that absolutely does everything. Most conditions in the UK, to be fair, other than at the moment, because, you know, I don't know when you're watching this, but we're in the middle of a heat wave at the moment, so it just seems that every single evening is hot, every single day is hot. But in most situations in the UK, I'm going to hold these up to the camera now. I'm holding up a bottle with, I don't know how I'm going to do this while holding my microphone as well, but we'll give it a go. I've got a bottle that has got 500 ml of energy drink in it, and I've also got a gel. So these 2 things, I'm going to drop the sachet out of the way. These 2 things in an hour is going to give me my 60 grams of carbohydrate, but it's giving me half the amount of fluid, as I said in the original example. And you'll find that in most conditions in the UK, you probably lose about 500 ml of sweat an hour, and therefore replacing it with a drink, salty fluid that's got the carbs in, does the job. But because I've got a shortfall in energy, because I'm not drinking the other bottle, I need a gel as well. The third example would be, it's really cold and I'm on a steady long endurance ride. I need my 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour. I'm sipping away at this in the winter, and I look at it after 2 hours and I've barely touched it. I've probably done a quarter of a bottle in 2 hours. And what you can do there is just say, well, I'm going to write that off. That's such an insignificant amount of fluid. I've not been perspiring, therefore I haven't been needing to put any more fluid back into my body. It's insignificant, so therefore I should be consuming 2 TORQ units an hour. I'm holding up 2 gels to the camera now, but I could easily hold up a gel and a bar. I could also hold up a gel and jellies. I could hold up jellies and a bar. It's all 60 grams of carbohydrate. But hopefully that helps to explain that the fueling system isn't just about fuel. It's about balancing your fueling with your hydration. And your fueling is a constant. So if you're aiming for 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour, regardless of your perspiration rates, it's always 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour. The variable is how much you're sweating.
Yep.
And that's what the fueling system allows.
Yep, absolutely. All the way up to 90 grams.
What I was going so I've kind of explained a little bit that, are you happy, Richard, because obviously you go into a lot of running stores and you spend a lot of time talking to runners. What I've explained there is how you kind of incorporate hydration into the fueling system for cyclists. And with cycling, it's quite easy because you carry your bottles on your bike. And then you might stop at a feed stop and you're carrying some sachets with you, you get the water and you just chuck your sachets in and off you go again. So it's quite easy with cycling. You carry your solid fueling units in your back pocket, you've got your drink on your bike. But with running, it's a little bit more complicated, isn't it? Because you can't carry the amount of fluid that you do when you're cycling. So would you be able to give us a bit of an idea as to what you would recommend if you're talking to a runner?
Yeah, so the tricky thing with running...
Let's base it on 60 grams of carbs an hour, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I saw this yesterday in a retailer with 20 runners who just went out for... a 5k, but they all came back pouring with sweat because it was still 24 degrees at 7 p.m. at night. The issue is that the cooling effect as well when you're running is different to when you're cycling because you simply don't have as much of a draft. So the sweat rates are going to be higher. You've also got the issue when you're running of, can you actually consume fuel in the same way that you can when you're cycling. And with cycling, you've got the opportunity to freewheel, so you can get your breathing under control a little bit. Whereas with running, you're generally breathing quite hard all the time, which is why predominantly in the running shops, probably 90%, upwards of 90% are gels that are sold, because they are the fastest way to get the fuel in, no doubt about it.
Just rip the top off,
And
squeeze,
just
bang.
squeeze it, and then it's all in. And it's super fast to absorb. There's no chewing involved. The absorbency rate, as we know, is super fast. So it's the easiest way to do it. But the issue is as well about the hydration element. So there are various different ways that runners will carry fluid, and when you're starting to race, you then also you become reliant upon the drink stations positioned around the course as well. And sometimes these will only contain water, so you have to look at what your solutions are there as well, so you don't potentially even risk something like hyponatremia, which is where you only have water over a prolonged period of time, but you're not replenishing the salts. Now, thankfully, our gels do include some salts in there to help balance that out.
To avoid that, yeah.
Because we don't want that to happen. Our TORQ hydration drink is a very strong product in this regard, and is very popular in our running stores.
I haven't got one I haven't got one I can hold up, but it's basically half the size of that, and it's got much less carbs in it, but it's focused on the electrolyte side of things. So you still add it to 500 ml, but the carbohydrate, it's only 15 grams per sachet rather than 30. So it's a much smaller amount of carbohydrate.
The reason we produced that product and why it's particularly popular, not only with runners, but also with people who are doing indoor cycling, where your sessions are a lot shorter, but much more intense, and where replacing the sweat becomes more important than replacing the fuel for like a 45-minute thrash on a Zwift, then we use the 15 grams of carbs, although it does constitute part of your fuel, if you will. It's primarily there to drive up the speed of water across the gut wall into the bloodstream. This is why it's more effective than a 0-calorie tablet, which we get asked all the time. Why do you not do tablets? Because we don't believe in them. And we don't believe in them because we feel our hydration is a more effective, faster solution.
Well, research has proven that the glucose and sodium combine, and they drive water across the intestinal wall. Without glucose, you don't get that, and a lot of these tablets are just literally artificial sweeteners. So you've got a little tablet, you've got sweeteners in there, you've got your electrolytes. Yes, you're getting fluid and electrolytes, but you only get that passive movement of the fluid and electrolytes across the gut wall. The moment you add a little bit of glucose, you drive that across the wall.
So that in case there's any confusion, the difference between our hydration drink and our energy drink is that the energy drink gives you more fuel but doesn't hydrate you quite as fast, whereas our hydration drink gives you a little less fuel, but its primary purpose is to hydrate you as fast as possible.
So with running, obviously, you're obviously recommending, as I would, the hydration drink rather than the energy drink for running. I think when you get to the kind of the ultra trail type runs where people are out for hours and hours and they're covering massive distances, I think the fueling then gets a lot closer to cycling, doesn't it? People tend to. So if you think of your cyclists carrying their bottles on their bike, as an ultra runner, you're going to have a lot more variety of different fuels. But you've quite rightly said, the fuel source that most runners would use would be the gels, because of them being really quick. And then in terms of the fluid and the hydration source, you're saying it's a combination of using our hydration drink because it's a nice weak solution. It doesn't interfere with the fueling too much. And also the water that's on the feed stations, because typically on a feed station, it's not going to be anything other than water, is it? So what you're kind of saying there really is that, if we look at the scenario like I've done with cycling, let's take a really cold day. So you're doing a marathon, and it's London Marathon, and it's unseasonably cold. So you're not too worried about your fluid loss is going to be relatively moderate. But you still know that you need your 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour. In that scenario, we're basically talking about saying, well, you could carry a hydration flask with you if you want to, but really, the research is showing that through our diet, we get plenty of sodium anyway. So it's likely in that scenario that if you just take your 2 gels an hour, your 60 grams of carbs, and you make sure that you just use the water on the feed stations, that's kind of going to be okay,
Yes,
isn't it?
absolutely, yeah.
But when the weather gets a little bit warmer, and you mentioned about hyponatremia. Yes, we've got some electrolytes in the gels, but when the weather gets a little bit warmer, and you're perspiring more, you do need to start thinking about electrolytes a little bit more. So I guess in that scenario, you would carry in your soft flask, you'd carry our hydration drink, and you'd combine that with the water at the feed stations. And there's a little bit of a compromise there compared to cycling, but at least you've got you're getting electrolytes in, you're getting fluid in, and then you're taking your gels on as well. And then you've got the final scenario where it's really hot, and you're going to be losing a lot of fluid. You're going to be losing a lot of electrolytes as well. And this is where probably our solution would be, you could consider mixing your hydration drink at double strength, carrying it in your soft flask, so you've got a very rich mixture in there of electrolytes and fluid. But the key there is that's not, if you're losing 500 ml through sweat, you don't want to be drinking 500 ml of that. You want to basically be mixing that with the water at the feed station. So you take, you're swigging on that to get your salts and everything in, but you're then utilising the feed stations with the water sources. You're chasing it with water, and it's mixing in your stomach as a normal hydration drink.
Yes, absolutely. So you're still ultimately creating a hypotonic solution, which will absorb super fast. So it's an odd thing maybe for a nutrition company to talk about you only drinking water, but it actually has a purpose.
You've got to think of your stomach's a mixing pot. Absolutely. And you say hypertonic, actually, by the time you put gels and things in there, it probably becomes isotonic, actually. But, this is the thing that we've got to be really clear about, is that isotonicity, which is in balance with your blood, is a great way to hydrate, and it's a great way to fuel. It's just that from what you've been talking about before with the hydration drink, that is hypotonic. It's less concentrated in your blood. That's an even better way to hydrate, but it's not a very good way to fuel.
No.
So what you're trying to do generally is you're trying to create this isotonic regime in your stomach. And bizarrely, when I was talking about the cycling and you're consuming 2 bottles of energy drink an hour, funnily enough, our drink is isotonic. So if I'm drinking a litre of fluid an hour through our energy drinks, I've got a completely isotonic regime going on there. We're probably going really in depth onto tonicity and stuff now. This is a subject of another podcast, but hopefully what we've done there is really explained up to 90 grams, certainly up to 60, and those principles carry forward to 90, how the original fueling system worked.
Absolutely.
What we need to introduce now is, I'm going to hold these up to the camera. We have brought out, we've got a separate podcast on this that was probably quite heavy going and sciencey, but we've brought out a new range of products that are 1-to-1 maltodextrin to fructose, whereas all the research we were talking about before was looking at 2-to-1 maltodextrin to fructose. Okay, so it just basically means that there's less glucose and more fructose in the product. And the reason we've done this is because there's been an increasing body of evidence, and the latest study from literally months ago, at the end of 2025, has shown how effective a 1-to-1 ratio is at very high carbohydrate consumption. So whereas the 1-to-1, the 2-to-1 that we've just been talking about, 90 grams is kind of your ceiling really, and then once you start to go beyond that, you overload the glucose transporters and you can't absorb the carbs. With 1-to-1, you actually get a helping and an assistance effect from glucose pulling more fructose into the body. But I'm not going to go into the science too much because we've covered that in a previous podcast. So please go back to podcast 2 if you really want to understand the science behind 1-to-1. But effectively, what it means is that all the data is showing that you can consume and use 120 grams of carbohydrate plus if you consume the ratio of 1-to-1 glucose to fructose. And when we talk about maltodextrin is glucose. It's a very special form of glucose that gets into the blood quicker, but it is glucose. So 1-to-1 is 1 part glucose, 1 part fructose. What the earlier podcast did discuss as well, though, is that if you underconsume on a 1-to-1 ratio, so let's say you took on 80 grams of carbohydrate an hour, it's not only less effective than our 2 to 1, it could actually cause stomach discomfort as well. So what's really important for us to get across here is that the 2 to 1 products are the relevant products to the vast majority of people, including myself. So I'm a former elite mountain biker. I took 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour last night. I used 2 to 1. If I was to go and I was going to compete, I'd probably be taking on board 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, and I'd stick to 2 to 1. I'm not saying that I think my best days are behind me. So if I have a big challenge next year, I probably will use 1 to 1. I'll take on board the science and I'll just see what kind of performance I can get. But what I have to do in that situation is commit to commit to those high carbohydrate intakes. So what we're going to do now, I don't know if it was Richard or myself that was going to explain this. I think, I'm going to continue to go through this, but please interject, Richard, if you want to. But I'm going to explain how you move from 90 grams of carbohydrate progressively up to 120 grams.
Okay.
Yeah? So if you've got something...
No.
I'm quite happy. I'll tell you what, I'm going to let Richard do this because...
This is something I've done quite a bit recently with bike shops, bike retailers, running shops as well, just to help people understand it. And whilst I wasn't in the previous podcasts, there's the simple fact of the matter regarding the research, which Matt has alluded to, is that as long as the glucose transporter is saturated and gets to about 60 grams an hour, as long as you don't go over that, the science showed that you could start to absorb more fructose than we previously, and that science previously thought was an acceptable amount. And this is how we've eventually arrived at 1 to 1, meaning the same amount of glucose as fructose. The reason we use maltodextrin, incidentally, is because it empties from the stomach quicker, it absorbs faster, and it's just a superior product to use in this situation. So the clever thing about how do you go from 90 grams up to 120 grams, I want you to try to visualize almost like a metronome where you've got 3 products in front of you and they're swinging. And then one product swings out and another one swings in from the other side. So effectively, if you start off with 3 TORQ gels, we'll just use the gels as an easy example. 3 TORQ gels, and we'll add 4 fingers up. So that's 90 grams of carbs, 30 plus 30 plus 30. If you take away one of the 30 gram units and add in one of the 40 gram units,
that's the one thing we didn't explain. Sorry, I'm just going to interject here.
Yes.
Is that the difference between the 1 to 1 and the 2 to 1 is the 2 to 1, our traditional fueling system, everything as we've explained is in 30 gram carb units. I'm going to hold these up now. The TORQ gel, the new Proto 1 to 1 Proto gel, contains 40 grams of carbohydrate, as does our energy drink, and that energy drink still goes in the 500ml bottle, but it's got 10 grams more carbohydrate per serve. Yep. So I needed to put that in because we missed that out, and this is why we dovetail so beautifully.
Absolutely. So if you're then starting to do 2 regular TORQ units, so that's 2 standard TORQ gels, holding them up here, and one of our new Proto gels, you've got 100 grams of carbs, but crucially, the amount of glucose does not exceed 60 grams. It's exactly the same. You're just getting an extra 10 grams of fructose. So that's how you get 100. If we then take out one of the 30 gram units and add in another of the Proto 40 gram units, then that's 110 grams. But you're still at 60 grams of glucose and 50 grams of fructose. So it's so easy to train your gut from 90 grams up to 120, because let's not make any bones about this. 120 grams of carbs is a lot of carbs.
And let's do that. Let's demonstrate that. So you're going to drop your 2 to 1 gel. You're going to pick this one up. So now Richard has got, this is what he has in his pocket, 3 big gels, delivering 120 grams of carbohydrate. And just to cover the research as well, the latest research is showing the highest oxidation rate. Oxidation is how it proves that carbohydrate is being burnt within the body, exogenous carbohydrate or carbohydrate taken on board externally, showing the highest oxidation rates and some of the highest oxidation efficiency. So it's showing that not only are you getting more carbohydrate burnt, but of the carbohydrate you're consuming, 86% of it is being burnt, which is an extremely high level.
Yep.
So the research absolutely backs this, that it is possible for you to get to this point, but it can't be done. You can't just go out and suddenly do this. Some people will. Some people have the constitution to be able to do it. But our advice is always going to be, as Richard has explained, look, get yourself up to 90 grams on 2-to-1. That may be enough. You may be perfectly happy with your performance and not want to move on from that. But if you do want to go to the next level, take on board carbohydrate progressively. And look, we've gone up to 120 grams. What the research is saying is some people's glucose transporters can take more than 60 grams of glucose. So a study back in 2005 on 1-to-1 showed 144 grams.
Yep. So 72 grams each.
Yeah. So 120 is almost it's opening that, that a lot of the pros now are doing, higher levels than that. Yep. But what we're saying really is the science is saying it's got to be 1-to-1. There's no point in you using a product with less fructose in than that, because it's very unlikely to work and you're going to get stomach problems and you won't get the oxidation rate.
Yeah. If you look at it mathematically, the rate that some people that you see out in the market, 1 to 0.8, that maxes out at 110 grams. And 110 is an unusual number to try to divide by smaller numbers.
Yeah, so that's 1 part glucose to 0.8 grams of fructose.
Absolutely.
So basically, it's got more fructose in than 2-to-1, but then you've got the problem there of underconsumption of that ratio does not work as well as 2-to-1. So 2-to-1 works much better up to 90 grams.
Yep.
So if people are using 1 to 0.8 and they're not taking 110 grams, it's inferior to 2-to-1. But if you're going to commit to high intakes, 1-to-1 is superior and proven to be superior to 1 to 0.8.
And there's that oxidation that Matt mentioned, which is your ability to burn the carbohydrate that you're consuming. And then you've also got what's called oxidation efficiency, which is how much oxygen is required to actually make that product effectively become a fuel that your body can use. And 1-to-1 is also proven to have a very high oxidation efficiency percentage, meaning that it basically doesn't need as much oxygen. You don't need to work as hard.
And also more of it's burnt,
yes,
which we sort of alluded to just now. So I think almost the final thing to cover on this is, I'm holding it up now. We also have a sachet of energy drink. So the same principle applies as to the regular fueling system. So what we've kind of explained to you here is how the revised, we need to come up with a name, is, revised, the new TORQ fueling system, but the revised and new TORQ fueling system, 2.0, basically takes a person from 30 grams of carbohydrate an hour right up to 120 grams plus. We've got a system, and technologically this is hugely advanced. There's no one in the world that can provide the units in the way that we've produced and these two ratios, so that depending on your needs, you can choose the fuel that you want. But what we've got is a sachet of energy drink, and it's the same principle, because if I put that, and I've got this bottle here, and I'm drinking 500 ml of, let's say it's a normal British climate, so I'm consuming 500 ml of this energy drink an hour at 1-to-1. I only need 2 gels then. You see, so I've drunk one of those, I've got 2 gels, that's my 120 grams of carbohydrate an hour. If it's really, really hot weather and I'm losing loads of fluid, I'll have 2 bottles. So I'm going to drink a litre of fluid an hour. I'm getting 80 grams of carbohydrate just out of my drinks. I only need 1 gel, which I'm holding up now. So the fueling system, the beauty of it is you've got 2 ratios that will take you from 30 grams of carbohydrate to 120 grams. It adapts according to your fluid needs and your hydration needs as well. And that, ultimately that is your performance. Your performance is making sure you maintain hydration and make sure that you get adequate fuel in for your performance.
Yep, perfect.
So, hopefully, I think that pretty much concludes the podcast. I think we covered that fairly efficiently. I think there's quite a lot of information for you to take on board. If you've got any questions, obviously you can contact us. You can drop us an email. But lots of information. At the moment, the website's mainly set up for the original fueling system, but you'll see, coming soon, this will be fully explained, and you can obviously watch the podcast, watch or listen to the podcast at any time, and tell your friends. But Yeah, thanks, Richard, for being
Cheers.
a great guest on the podcast, and it won't be the last time, I'm sure. I think that worked.
Lots to talk about, always have been.
Yeah,
30 years
absolutely.
of it.
And we'll see you in episode 6.